Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to stay updated with all our latest content. Join us and never miss out on the excitement. 1995. Babacar Diop, a Senegalese immigrant with a teenaged son named Assane, is employed in Paris as a driver and occasional housekeeper for the wealthy Pellegrini family. Babacar and Assane's interactions with the Pellegrinis are mixed. Madame Anne Pellegrini seems to like the pair, calling Babacar a gentleman, while daughter Juliette flirts with Assane. On the other hand, Hubert, the family patriarch, behaves coldly towards Babacar. Anne apologizes to Babacar for Hubert's attitude and offers him any book from their library to give to Assane for his upcoming 14th birthday. Babacar selects Arsène Lupin, Gentleman Burglar, by Maurice Leblanc. Later, a diamond necklace that had originally belonged to Queen Marie Antoinette disappears from a safe in Hubert Pellegrini's study, and Babacar is brought in for questioning. Hubert accuses Babacar of having taken the necklace due to resentment regarding his status in life compared to that of his employers. Gabriel Dumont, the detective called in by Hubert, offers to take Babacar to the police station to clear everything up. Babacar becomes enraged, swears on Assane's life that he was not the thief, and begs Anne for help. However, she remains silent. After being found guilty, Babacar is sent to prison. On one of Assane's visit days, the guards discover that he has hanged himself in his cell. Devastated by his father's death and convinced of his innocence, Assane is furious at the Pellegrini family. Later, while going through Babacar's belongings, he finds the Arsène Lupin book and is immediately entranced by its contents. Present-day Assane meets his ex-wife Claire in a cafe to give her an alimony payment and to discuss his visit schedule with their 13-year-old son, Raoul. Claire wants Assane to be more involved in Raoul's life. Assane promises to visit them the following weekend and claims that things are going to change. Claire, having heard this many times before, is hopeful but skeptical. Under the alias Luis Perena, Assane gains employment as a janitor at the Louvre Museum, where the newly recovered Queen's necklace is being auctioned. Assane intends to steal the necklace in an act of vengeance for his father's death. He appeals to 3 loan sharks, Kevin, Vincent, and Rudy, for help with the crime. Although initially reluctant, they agree after he presents his plan of action. On the day of the auction, the loan sharks infiltrate the museum, disguised as janitors carrying spray bottles filled with chloroform. Assane adopts the persona of a multi-millionaire American tech businessman named Paul Cernine and enters the auction, which is being overseen by Juliette Pellegrini. The heist does not go according to plan, as the loan sharks find out that their spray bottles of chloroform are ineffective in knocking the museum's security guards unconscious. They are thus forced to fight them physically, creating a commotion and costing precious time. Assane, meanwhile, begins bidding increasingly lofty sums for the Queen's necklace due to competition from a wealthy German collector, driving the price up dramatically until he finally makes a winning bid of 60 million euros. Kevin and Vincent, now wearing the uniforms of the security guards, decide to betray Assane in order to get the necklace for themselves. As the necklace is being presented to Assane by Thibault, the auctioneer, Kevin and Vincent attack them and tie them up, grabbing the diamonds for themselves and racing out the door and into an inconvenient and ostentatious Ferrari that Rudy has brought as a getaway car. Because of Rudy's poor driving, the car winds up jumping the embankment surrounding the museum and crashing through the Pyramide Inversée. After the police arrive and retrieve the Queen's necklace, all 3 men are arrested. Assane is briefly questioned by Captain Romain Logier, who finds him suspicious, but ultimately allows him to leave after failing to find any evidence that ties him to the crime. Unbeknownst to everybody, Assane, having anticipated that Kevin, Vincent, and Rudy would try to double-cross him, switched out the necklaces during the fight, allowing Kevin and Vincent to make off with a fake created by Assane's close friend Benjamin. After changing back into the uniform of a janitor, Assane exits the museum with Marie Antoinette's diamonds safely in tow. The next day, Assane upholds his earlier promise to visit Raoul and Claire. While walking along the Seine with Raoul, Assane gifts him the same collection of Arsène Lupin stories that his own father had given him 25 years earlier. 1995. After Babacar's death, Assane remains in their apartment without adult supervision. Realizing that no arrangements have been made for him, Dumont arrives and begins questioning Assane about his situation. Assane claims that he is 16 and that lives with his mother. Dumont, fully aware that Assane is lying on both counts, orders him to pack his bags. Not wanting to leave, Assane attempts to escape out the window, but gets caught by Dumont. Assane is taken to an orphanage, where a social worker named Philippe Bouchard gives him a Bible. Assane instead chooses to reread the Arsène Lupin stories, although he hides the latter book inside his Bible. Later, Bouchard tells Assane that an anonymous benefactor has paid for him to be educated at the elite Andrézy school. He also gives Assane a letter from his father, which appears to be a confession of guilt regarding the disappearance of the necklace. Upset by its contents, Assane tosses the letter aside. When he begins attending the Andresi school, Assane is harassed almost immediately due to his race and his working-class immigrant background. However, another student comes to his aid, telling Assane's bullies to clear off or face being reported to the school's authorities. The boy who helped Assane introduces himself as Benjamin Farrell. Present day, with Raoul in tow, Assane visits Benjamin in his antiquary and inquires about the state of the Queen's necklace. Benjamin tells Assane that contrary to what the Pellegrinis had claimed, the necklace was never taken apart and was completely unmarked, suggesting that it had never been stolen in the first place. Assane is shocked by the news and its implications with regards to Babacar's innocence. News breaks that the necklace recovered by the police following the Louvre burglary was actually a copy. Juliette Pellegrini visits her mother Anne in a swanky Parisian hotel, and the two discuss the situation. Anne comments that she lives in a prison of gold built by Hubert and urges Juliette to be careful when dealing with him due to the many skeletons he has in his closet. As she leaves the hotel, Juliette is given an anonymous message telling her to be at Luxembourg Gardens at 2 p.m. without any police protection. When he meets Juliette, Assane is dressed in the uniform of a deli and eat delivery man, wearing a mask and sunglasses that obscure his face. Against Assane's wishes, Juliette has informed the police about the note that had been left for her, and they monitor the two closely, although they cannot discern Assane's identity. After sitting down, Assane takes off his facial covering, leading Juliette to gasp in shock. Before she can blurt his name out, Assane places his hand over the microphone pin she is wearing on her jacket and tells her that he knows that the necklace was never taken apart. Juliette admits that she and Hubert had thought up the story to drum up publicity for the auction and reveals that the original necklace had been bought from a South African jeweler 5 years previously. Assane exhorts Juliette to tell him that his father was innocent. Juliette cannot, as she legitimately believes Babacar to have been guilty. Assane abruptly leaves Juliette and jumps on a bike, heading for the exit of the park. Captain Logier, supervising the situation from a surveillance van, orders his officers to follow Assane, but soon a number of identically dressed men appear with deliveries which Assane had previously ordered. Logier is furious when, due to the confusion created by the other deliverymen, Assane escapes the gardens. Later, he brings Juliette into the interrogation room to ask her about her relationship with the man she had spoken with. Sensing that she is being accused of collusion and not wanting to give Assane away, Juliette threatens to use her connections to get Logier fired if he does not find the necklace. Irritated by Juliette's inability to clear Babacar's name, Assane examines the signed confession once more. He suddenly realizes that several words are misspelled. In Assane's view, this is out of character for Babacar, who had always stressed the importance of proper spelling. Two of the misspellings, comet and library, particularly strike Assane's attention, as there had been an Etienne Comet in the same prison as Babacar, who had worked in the prison library. Comet is still being held in the same prison, although he is ill and confined to his cell. Assane enters the prison under the guise of a visit with an inmate named Djibril Traoré, whom he claims is his cousin. Assane tells Traoré that he intends to take his place. Initially, Traoré finds the idea ludicrous, as he and Assane do not look alike. However, after Assane reminds Traoré that he had previously been in solitary confinement and manages to slip into Traoré's handcuffs, the inmate accepts. The guards have changed over during the visit, and the new guard, unaware of which of the two men is the real Traoré, takes Assane to a cell. Now installed in prison, Assane attempts to make contact with Comet, but finds out that the aging man's health has taken a turn for the worse, and that he is in the infirmary. Shortly afterward, Assane is attacked by Bodgan and Mirko, two men who claim that Djibril Traoré owed them 3,000 euros worth of drugs, which Assane has 3 days to give to them. Assane attempts to infiltrate the infirmary by flirting with the nurse and claiming that he has a stomach complaint, but after briefly questioning him about his symptoms, the nurse dismisses him. Later, Assane insults Bogdan and Mirko, and they stab him in the stomach with a sharpened toothbrush. This time, the nurse allows him to remain in the infirmary overnight, as she suspects that the wound was the result of a suicide attempt. In the middle of the night, Assane takes the opportunity to visit Comet, who reveals that Babacar had given him a book which contained answers to Assane's questions, and that he still has it in his cell. After being discharged from the infirmary, Assane retrieves the book, a collection of Arsène Lupin stories, in which some letters and words have been faintly marked. When put together, the marked segments spell out the message, "Am innocent," framed by Anne Pellegrini. After Assane's wound reopens, he visits the infirmary again, where he sees Comet one last time. Clearly dying, Comet asks Assane to make his wife smile. Assane agrees to this, thanking Comet for having saved the book. Later that that night, Assane pretends to hang himself in the prison bathrooms, taking several sleeping pills to slow his heart rate and using a stolen basketball net as a safety harness. Upon discovering his apparently lifeless body, the prison nurse is horror-struck, and Assane is bundled onto an ambulance and sent to the hospital. Assane wakes up in the ambulance and escapes when it stops at a traffic light. The next day, Assane enters Anne Pellegrini's hotel room and angrily interrogates her about Babacar's accusation. Anne admits that she had urged Babacar to sign a confession to the theft despite believing in his innocence, but reveals that she did it in the hope that it would help reduce his sentence, having been told that the judge would be lenient and that Dumont, who was in charge of the case, would help Babacar, neither of which were ultimately true. Anne also tells Assane that she was the one who paid for his education at the Andrézy school, but this does little to calm Assane's fury about the injustice his father suffered. Later that night, Assane quietly breaks into the home of Comet's wife and fulfills his promise by leaving her one of the diamonds from Marie Antoinette's necklace. Juliette, meanwhile, visits her father and asks him whether Babacar was truly responsible for the disappearance of the Queen's necklace. Hubert becomes enraged by the question, castigating Juliette for bringing up a decades-old event and reaffirming that Babacar was guilty. After calming down, Hubert apologizes for his outburst, stating that his feelings were hurt by what he perceived as an attack from his own daughter. At the police station, a young detective named Youssef Guedira notices that Assane's aliases Paul Cernin and Luis Perena are anagrams of Arsène Lupin. Guedira, as much a Lupin aficionado as Assane, has begun to believe that the Louvre heist is related to the crime stories. He presents his theory to his co-worker, Lieutenant Sophia Belkacem, who finds it ridiculous and advises him not to repeat it to Logier. Claire is surprised and happy to see that Raoul is largely ignoring his video games in favor of the Arsène Lupin book that Assane gave him. He is so obsessed with the stories that he has been staying up past his bedtime to read them. 1995. Inspector Gabriel Dumont meets Hubert Pellegrini, informing him that Babacar is continuing to deny responsibility for the theft of the Queen's necklace, and pointing out that absent any solid evidence of Babacar's culpability, he will be let go. Dumont also notes that prior to the theft, Hubert had increased the insurance policy on the necklace. Hubert claims that he had changed the policy after being informed by a collector that the necklace was undervalued. In a later meeting, Dumont tells Hubert that Babacar's location on the day of the theft rules him out of having been the culprit, and that his fingerprints, which had been found on the safe, had most likely been planted there in order to frame him for the crime. Sensing that Dumont believes him to be guilty of insurance fraud, Hubert makes mention of his many powerful connections and vaguely threatens to hurt the detective's wife. He instructs Dumont to urge his own wife, Anne, that a signed confession to the theft will reduce Babacar's time in prison. In fact, Hubert is well aware that Babacar's inevitable failure to produce the jewels will lead to a very lengthy sentence. At the orphanage, Assane notices a blonde girl being harassed by a group of boys. He attempts to intervene, telling the boys to leave. Before the group can gang up on Assane, Philippe Bouchard enters the room, and Assane is able to sit down next to the girl and asks her if she is all right. The girl laughs and tells him that there are two types of men: barbarians who behave aggressively and rudely towards women, and knights who treat them as though they can't survive on their own. Assane, according to the girl, fits into this type, and that she doesn't care for either. Realizing that she may have been overly harsh, the girl also mentions that she knows who Assane is and is sorry about Babacar's death. After playfully calling Assane a knight once again and inviting him to make himself comfortable, the girl introduces herself as Claire. Sometime later, Assane and Claire sit on a park bench, reading. Noticing that Assane is engrossed in his book about Arsène Lupin, Claire jokingly comments on Lupin's many successes with women. Assane tells her that he appreciates the way that Lupin is never caught unawares and isn't afraid of anything. Suddenly, the boys who had been teasing Claire earlier arrive on the scene. Claire cautions Assane to play dead, believing that this will make them more likely to leave. The boys rudely joke that Claire and Assane have slept together. Although Claire exhorts Assane to remember her words about the barbarians and the knights, Assane gets up and attacks them. Afterwards, as Claire is cleaning Assane's injuries in the bathroom, he tries to kiss her. Claire pulls away and giggles, telling him that she doesn't need a boyfriend. Assane claims that she just doesn't know that he is the man of her life, and much to her amusement, demonstrates that he was able to steal a cigarette lighter from one of the boys he had fought. Later, Assane tells Claire that he has thought about her classification of knights and barbarians, and suggests that he fits into a third category, the gentleman, who doesn't care about anything except what matters. Claire is moved by this and kisses Assane. She tells him that she likes the idea that they will always be there for one another. Present-day Dumont, now middle-aged and living in an expensive house with his wife and two children, has been promoted to chief commissioner commissioner of the Parisian police department. Unbeknownst to him, Assane has broken into his home and rigged cameras in all of the rooms in order to be aware of his plans and engagements. Assane goes to the town hall of Paris's 3rd arrondissement, where Dumont has an appointment, pretending to be an IT specialist and loudly mentioning that there is an issue surrounding porn on the computer at Dumont's office in the building. Highly embarrassed, Dumont winds up allowing Assane to lead him to the office. However, Assane takes him to a deserted corridor and uses pressure points to knock him out. When Dumont wakes up, he is horrified to find that he has been tied to a chair in the middle of a dark room in front of a television screen. In another room nearby, using a voice modifier, Assane accuses Dumont of framing Babacar for the theft of the Queen's necklace. Dumont argues that he didn't frame anybody and asks if his interrogation has anything to do with the break-in at the Louvre. Assane asserts that Dumont has accepted bribes from criminals in order to line his pockets and threatens to tell his wife Hélène if he doesn't give up any more information. Dumont, now highly agitated, maintains he doesn't understand what Assane wants. Assane calls Dumont's wife. Dumont tries to talk to her, but is informed by Assane that she cannot hear him. Hélène does, however, hear Assane threatening her husband and becomes terrified for his safety. Dumont, horror-struck, tells Assane that he used the bribes to provide for the future of his children and begs for water. Assane hangs up the phone, enters Dumont's room, and gives him a water bottle, leaving before the commissioner can see his face. The interrogation is then interrupted when Assane gets a call from Claire, who is on a break from a shift in the hospital where she works. Claire asks Assane if he has been thinking about something he can do for Raoul's upcoming birthday. Assane, realizing that he has completely forgotten about it, attempts to claim that he is planning a surprise. Claire is dismayed, as Assane had said the same thing last year but had failed to deliver on his promises. She tries to get Assane to tell her what is keeping him so busy, assuring him that he can speak openly with her, but he evades her questions. Before they hang up, Claire implores Assane not to get himself into too much trouble. In the meantime, news of Dumont's kidnapping reaches the police station. Laugier rounds up his officers and tells them to look for any leads on the case. Security camera footage outside City Hall shows a tall man of West African origin, wearing an orange beanie, dragging a large case into a van. The officers think that Dumont is inside it. Guedera suggests using the GPS on Dumont's phone to locate the van. In the interrogation rooms, Assane reveals that he has installed security cameras throughout Dumont's house and knows everything about his family. Dumont is enraged and grows even angrier when Assane threatens to release deep fakes of him making outrageous and incriminating statements if he doesn't cooperate. He demands to know what Assane wants. Assane, now equally riled up, yells that he wants to find out what happened to his father, accidentally giving away his identity. Dumont, now comprehending everything, begins to take pity on Assane, telling him that he understands how he feels and that if he stops the Inquisition, he will not be arrested. Assane says that he rarely changes his mind about people, but wants to change his mind about Dumont. The police officers have figured out that the van and Dumont's phone are in the northeastern suburb of Pantin. Laugier orders Belkacem, Guedera, and several others to join him in tracking down the culprit. Upon arriving in Pantin and finding the van and its driver, the officers requisition the case and open it, finding only a clown doll and parts of Dumont's phone, including the GPS system, inside. Realizing that they are being toyed with, the police find the van's driver and order him to tell them how he came to have the case. The driver reveals that he had been hired to drive a man around the town hall several times and then drop him back off in front of it. Guedera suddenly realizes that Dumont never left the town hall at all. Laugier and Belkacem find this idea ludicrous and ask him who would do such a thing. Guedera responds that Arsène Lupin would. Although he is mocked by Belkacem, the officers decide to follow Guedera's lead and arrive on the scene moments after Assane leaves. Upon locating Dumont, they untie him. Dumont denies being aware of the identity of his kidnapper. Having returned to the necklace case, Guedera decides to tell Laugier about the connections he has drawn between the theft and the Arsène Lupin stories. He states his belief that the man in the orange hat captured on the security footage is the same person as Paul Cernin and the man who had met with Juliette in Luxembourg Gardens. When asked what connects all three cases, Guedera notes that Dumont had been in charge of handling the original necklace theft. Dumont, now safely back home, remembers that Assane has installed video cameras throughout his house. He angrily destroys them. Afterwards, he calls Hubert Pellegrini and tells him that another party is involved in the Babacar Diop case. However, Assane, who has also hacked into Dumont's virtual assistant, records the conversation. During the night, Assane flies a drone into Hubert Pellegrini's mansion and photographs several papers in his study. After the drone is caught by security guards, Hubert finds a note attached to it that reads, "I'll get you." Dumont is having breakfast in a cafe when Assane sits down across from from him and introduces himself. Dumont asks Assane what he wants. Assane states that he wants to know more about Hubert. Although initially reluctant to respond, Dumont agrees once Assane promises to stop harassing him and his family. He advises Assane to contact a journalist named Fabienne Berriot, who had nearly been successful in taking down the entire Pellegrini business empire. Assane reads about Fabienne's work online. After she published a book titled Dirty Money, The Pellegrini System, in 1996, Hubert was able to saddle her with a record defamation lawsuit, after which her career lay in tatters, and she was ostracized by her fellow journalists. Currently, Fabienne lives alone with her dog, Jacques. Assane orders a copy of Fabienne's book. A few days later, Fabienne arrives at her house and finds Assane there waiting for her. Upon seeing Assane, Fabienne is surprised but not afraid. Assane reveals that he has read her book. She responds that Fabienne doesn't exist anymore, having been silenced by Hubert Pellegrini. Assane tells her that the two of them share a common enemy in Hubert. Each time the name Pellegrini is mentioned, Jacques barks. Fabienne admits that she taught him to do this upon hearing the name, but remains suspicious of Assane's motives, initially believing him to be a spy sent by Hubert. Assane then tells her about Babacar's arrest and subsequent death in prison, and suggests that they work together to take Hubert down once and for all. In the police station, Laugier, Belkacem, and Guedera tell Dumont that they believe his kidnapper and the culprit behind the Louvre incident to be one and the same, pointing out that Dumont was in charge of the original investigation into the Queen's necklace, and that both cases were marked by a similar ostentatious showmanship. Guedera decides, against the wishes of the other two, to bring up his Arsène Lupin idea. Dumont mocks Guedera's theory, but allows the detectives to begin taking evidence from witnesses in order to build a physical description of the Louvre thief. Afterwards, Dumont texts Hubert Pellegrini, arranging a meeting in order to discuss Babacar. The next day, Assane is surprised to find Fabienne waiting for him in a car outside his house. She tells Assane that since Hubert destroyed her career, she has nothing left to lose and wants to take revenge. Assane invites Fabienne into his house, where she asks him what year his father was framed for the necklace theft. Upon finding out that it was 1995, Fabienne reveals that Pellegrini was on the verge of financial ruin during this period and posits that he framed Babacar to collect the insurance from the necklace. Assane tells Fabienne that he needs solid proof to be able to accuse Hubert of criminal activity. Fabienne brings Assane to the offices of The Objector, the newspaper for which she worked for the entirety of her journalistic career. She tells Assane that in the archives there is a tape which contains incriminating footage of Hubert. Working together, Assane and Fabienne are able to infiltrate the building and procure the evidence. The tape itself shows Hubert selling arms to Malaysian terrorists who went on to use them to blow up the French embassy, killing 11 people. Assane remarks that in doing this, Hubert betrayed the nation of France. Later, Hubert and Juliette are in a meeting with a group of investors when they receive news that a Twitter account with the handle Salvator813 has posted a screenshot of the video and is threatening to reveal the whole story if Hubert doesn't confess to his role in the original necklace theft. Juliette is concerned about the contents of the tape, while Hubert insists that the whole thing is faked. Since Juliette wants good publicity for the foundation she is creating, Hubert decides to arrange a press conference about the tape. Assane arrives for a visit with Raoul and encounters Claire hastily leaving for a night out with a group of female friends. While the two are playing video games together, Raoul tells Assane that he enjoyed the Arsène Lupin book very much and has begun reading the sequels. He also reveals that Claire is not with friends, having instead gone for a date with a doctor she had started seeing. Assane claims to be happy for her, but Raoul is annoyed and tells him to stop pretending not to care. With Benjamin, Assane watches Hubert give his press conference on TV. Hubert claims that the threat is little more than a rumor, and that the only reason he is giving the conference is because of his daughter's foundation. He challenges Salvatore to show himself publicly and prove his allegations. Fabienne, standing amongst the members of the press covering the event, loudly asks Hubert if he believes himself to be responsible for the 1996 Malaysian terror attack. Visibly enraged, Hubert states that he has nothing further to say. When Fabienne returns home, she finds Assane waiting for her. Assane compliments Fabienne on her performance, and she replies that it felt good to accuse Hubert publicly. She also informs Assane that one of his men attempted to follow her, but that she successfully evaded him. Assane is less certain that she is safe, but Fabienne assures him that due to her journalistic experience, she knows how to lose a tale. Assane reveals that his plan is to make a disguised appearance on the television show The Other Edition, which draws in 2 million viewers each night, but which Fabienne derides as being not journalism, although she eventually agrees to the plan and tells Assane that she wants to go with him. Assane insists that she remain in her home, believing she will be in less danger there. While Assane is putting on makeup to disguise himself for the broadcast, Fabienne tells him that he has brought her back to life. Meanwhile, 4 of the attempts made by the police at creating a reconstruction of Assane's face fall through, since all of the witnesses remember him differently. Furthermore, Dumont tells Logier, Belkacem, and Guedera that none of them look like his kidnapper. Guedera presents Dumont with a final attempt, made with the assistance of Vincent, one of the loan sharks who had helped Assane break into the Louvre. Although the 5th reconstruction looks almost exactly like Assane, Dumont continues to maintain that the man depicted was not his kidnapper, and orders the detectives to stop attempting to connect the 2 issues. As a punishment for his continued attempts to do just that, Guedera is removed from the case entirely. However, Guedera is suspicious that Dumont is lying about not recognizing the final facial reconstruction, noting his expression when he saw it for the first time. Belkacem admits that he is probably right, but tells him that they can't investigate their own commissioner. Logier, fed up and worried that the case may be assigned to another team, urges Guedera to let go of the whole thing. Dressed as the aged and heavily bearded Salvatore, Assane makes his appearance on the other edition. The presenter of the show admits that he did not expect Salvatore to be so old, and Assane replies that those who fight against injustice should not be assumed to be young. He tells the presenter about the contents of the tape. However, when it is played, a significant amount of the footage has been wiped, with nothing incriminating remaining. Although the security guards attempt to keep him in the building, Assane successfully fights them off and storms out in a rage, removing his wig and false beard as he returns to Fabienne's house. Hubert, secretly attending the broadcast, is called by Juliette, who has been watching on her computer. She informs him that she thinks that Salvatore is actually Assane Diop. Juliette also reveals that Assane was the one she encountered at Luxembourg Gardens and the one who stole the necklace from the Louvre. Hubert tells Juliette that Assane believes the Pellegrinis to be responsible for Babacar's death and that he wants to ruin them. Fabienne, upset by the broadcast's failure to take down Hubert, hears a knock at the door. She opens it to find Leonard Conet, the man who had previously attempted to follow her. Leonard threatens Fabienne with death unless she tells him the whereabouts of Assane Diop. Defiantly, Fabienne tells him that a good journalist never reveals her sources. When Assane arrives at Fabienne's home, he finds her hanging from a noose, echoing Babacar's death 25 years earlier. Unable to hold back his emotions, Assane breaks down in tears. Later, he finds a note from Fabienne in his copy of her book, in which she professes that their fight is only beginning. Back at the police station, Guedera sees Assane's interview while filling out paperwork. Thinking that Salvatore looks familiar, he compares the man on TV with the facial reconstruction that Dumont appeared to recognize, and sees that they are the same person. 2006. 11 years after Babacar's death, Assane has become a skilled petty thief who is able to use his charisma and charm to land himself in others' good graces before swindling them. One day, he impersonates a police officer in order to enter the apartments of a wealthy older woman named Agathe van der Meulen, telling her that burglars in the area will want her belongings and that she should simply give the most valuable ones to him for safekeeping. Agathe obliges, handing over treasures that her husband had acquired in the former Belgian Congo. She tells Assane that he is a gentleman. Later, Assane has drinks in an expensive bar with Benjamin, who tells him that he has found a good location for his antique shop. To celebrate, Assane gives Benjamin some of the items he has stolen from Agathe, including a Fabergé egg, to sell. The two notice Juliette Pellegrini enter the bar, and Assane excuses himself briefly. Assane meets Juliette, with whom he has been having an affair, in the bathroom. However, he tells her that he wants to end their relationship as he is hoping to commit fully to Claire. Upset, Juliette tells Assane that she will not keep waiting for him. Assane replies that she can stop waiting, as he loves Claire. Claire, meanwhile, is in an appointment with a therapist, in distress about her relationship with Assane. She discusses his frequent lateness for their engagements and reveals that she barely knows what he does when he isn't with her. Although Claire has given Assane many chances to change, he has consistently managed to disappoint her. The therapist is confused as to why Claire continues to stay with Assane, as they are not married and have no children. This does little to calm Claire's fears, as she has recently discovered that she is pregnant with Assane's child. At the therapist's prodding, Claire resolves to have a discussion with Assane that night to determine once and for all whether or not he cares about her. That night, while Assane and Claire have dinner in an expensive restaurant, a dispute erupts almost immediately, as Claire had been hoping for a quieter spot. Noticing that she looks extremely anxious, Assane asks Claire what the matter is. In a weak voice, Claire reveals her pregnancy. To her relief and delight, Assane is overjoyed by the news and begins loudly announcing it to everybody in the restaurant. While celebrating, Assane is surprised to see that Agathe is seated nearby and hastily exits with Claire in tow. As they walk across the Passerelle de Mornay, Claire reveals that the baby is due on December 11th. Assane is stunned, as this is the birthday of Maurice Leblanc, the creator of Arsène Lupin. After several jokingly made proposals for the baby's name fail to win favor with Claire, Assane tells her that he will do everything in his power to protect their child, and makes one final suggestion: Raoul, present day. On December 11th, 2020, the news breaks that Fabienne has been found dead in her apartment. Assane, back in his own home with Fabienne's dog Jacques, tells Benjamin that her death was his fault. Benjamin becomes concerned that Assane is in over his head, but an indignant Assane asks him whether he can simply let Hubert Pellegrini win. Benjamin reminds Assane that he has an ex-wife and child who both care about him, and that he had a surprise planned for the latter. Assane tells Benjamin that he is not in the mood for celebration, but Benjamin comments that this will mean that in effect Pellegrini has beaten him. Re-energized by this alternate perspective, Assane leaves Jacques with Benjamin and leaves for Claire's apartment. Guedera, meanwhile, has been discreetly using his punishment of filling out paperwork to further investigate the connections between the Lupin stories and the various crimes he believes to have been committed by the same man. At daybreak on December 11th, he wakes up at his desk and receives a phone notification that it is Maurice Leblanc's birthday and that a celebratory festival will be held in the seaside town of Étretat, Normandy, where Leblanc had lived. On a hunch, he decides to skip work, texting Belkacem to tell her that he is sick. While making his way through the streets of Paris, Assane realizes he is being followed by Leonard Coné. A chase ensues, with Assane managing to escape by running up the various levels of a parking garage and roof-hopping away. When he arrives at Claire's apartment, Assane gives Raoul a Lupin-style top hat and cape as a present. Raoul tells Assane that he isn't sure he likes the gift, but Assane assures him that he will love it when they reach their destination. Claire wishes the two well on their outing, but Assane informs her that he has a ticket for her too. Although Claire laments the fact that Assane never tells her about anything up front, she ultimately agrees to join them. Soon afterward, Assane, Claire and Raoul are on board a train going to Le Havre, near the Arsène Lupin festival in Étretat, where Assane plans to take them. On the train, Assane and Claire playfully banter about the Lupin stories, parts of which Claire has memorized from the early days of their relationship. Raoul is mildly embarrassed by their behavior and says that they are nuts. Assane replies that they may be nuts, but that they are connected. Later, Assane asks Claire about her new boyfriend, but Claire tells him it is none of his business. To Claire's consternation, Raoul reveals that the relationship is not progressing quickly. Claire, Assane, and Raoul take a selfie to commemorate the trip and Raoul's birthday. Upon inspecting the image, Assane is shocked to see Leonard in the background. Leonard, meanwhile, receives a phone call from Hubert Pellegrini. He tells Hubert that he has managed to track Assane down, but that he is with his wife and son. Hubert instructs Leonard to get rid of Assane for good, but to leave Claire and Raoul alone. To create a diversion, Assane takes a marble cake out of his bag, stands in the aisle of the train, and begins loudly singing "Happy Birthday" to Raoul. Claire and the other passengers sing along. While the song is being sung, Assane stares at Leonard to inform him that he is aware of his presence. Shortly afterwards, he tells Claire that he is going to get drinks from another part of the train. As he moves through the carriages, Leonard gets up and follows him. Assane tries to evade Leonard through skilled navigation of several obstacles, and by the time Leonard arrives at the end of the line of cars, Assane is nowhere to be seen. Aware that he must still be on the train, Leonard checks inside one of the storage rooms, and Assane, who has been lying in wait, immediately jumps on him. The two begin to fight. This ends with Assane physically overpowering Leonard and locking him in the storage room. When he returns to his seat, Claire, noticing that he appears to have exerted himself, asks him what happened. Assane claims that he got into a fight with another Arsène Lupin fan over which of the stories is the best. Raoul thinks that this is ridiculous. Claire is shocked that he has been fighting and suspicious of elements of the story, but does not press him for details. As the train nears Le Havre, Leonard manages to escape the storage closet and sits down next to Claire and Raoul, while Assane is retrieving their possessions from the luggage rack. Leonard comments that the family must be going to Étretat and asks Raoul if he is a fan of Lupin. Raoul replies that he is, crediting Assane with introducing the books to him. Claire is immediately unnerved by Leonard's presence and asks Assane if the two know each other. Assane says that they don't, but Leonard claims that they do. In a last attempt to fend Leonard off, Assane texts Logier claiming that Paul Cernine is on the train, dressed in a beige coat, which Leonard is actually wearing. Logier immediately calls the Le Havre police and tells them to meet the train when it arrives. The train pulls into the station, and Assane quietly instructs Claire, whose fears regarding Leonard have not abated, to disembark with Raoul. As they walk towards the doors, Assane assures them that he will catch up. Leonard, who is carrying a pistol, tells Assane that they are going to get off the train quietly. As the pair step onto the platform, several police officers arrive and arrest Leonard after finding the gun and one of Marie Antoinette's diamonds concealed on his person, the latter having been discreetly slipped into his pocket by Assane. After arriving in Étretat, Assane, Claire, and Raoul walk through the town's seafront promenade. Raoul is wearing the cape and top hat that Assane gave him, remarking that the outfit would look stupid anywhere else but is cool at an Arsène Lupin festival, where everybody else is dressed in a similar manner. Claire asks Assane and Raoul what happens to Lupin at the end of the books. Raoul informs her that nobody knows since he never got caught. Claire asserts that this proves that the books are fictional, since anybody doing what Lupin does would get caught immediately. Raoul says he is going to walk along the beach to explore the Hollow Needle, a rock formation that features in an Arsène Lupin story. Claire warns him not to go too far away. Images of Leonard taken by the Le Havre police are sent to Laugier and Belkacem. Belkacem notes that the man in the photographs is not the man whose face they have reconstructed, but Laugier wants him questioned anyway, since he was carrying one of the diamonds. As they prepare to leave for Le Havre, they run into Dumont, who asks where they are going. When they tell him, Dumont reveals that Leonard has already been released by the Le Havre police, as he had a license to carry the gun and a solid alibi for the time of the Louvre break-in. Dumont orders Laugier and Belkacem to examine the train footage in order to see who could have planted the diamond on him. Irritated by the entire fiasco, Laugier grumbles that Guédara ought to be there. Belkacem is increasingly suspicious of Dumont's motivations. Assane and Claire walk arm in arm through Étretat. Still concerned about the man on the train, Claire asks Assane who he was. Assane evades the question, telling Claire that he is sorting something out that impacts both him and Raoul, and that it concerns his father. Claire is hurt by Assane's unwillingness to talk, and indignantly asks what his father, of whom he has told her next to nothing, has to do with the situation. Assane promises that when he finishes everything, he will stop keeping secrets. He admits that he has said this many times before, but claims that this time it is true. Claire tells Assane that she is tired of pleading with him for information, and that she needs more from him in their relationship. Assane asks Claire to give him one last chance, telling her that all that truly matters is her and Raoul. At that moment, Claire realizes that she cannot see Raoul anywhere on the beach, and immediately becomes worried. Both parents begin looking for him, Assane on the promenade and Claire on the beach. Assane finds that it is difficult to tell the people in the town apart, as so many have the same Lupin-style cape and hat that Raoul was wearing. Claire, meanwhile, frantically asks other tourists whether they have seen her son, but runs into the same difficulties as Assane. Raoul himself has been abducted by Leonard, who stuffs him into the back seat of a car and drives off. As Claire continues her desperate siege on the beach, Assane hears somebody behind him call out to Lupin. Turning around, he finds himself face to face with Guédara. See you in the next video.